All right, Matthew, welcome to episode 51 of the Performance Advantage podcast with myself, Dr. Will O'Connor, and Dr. Matt Miller, sport scientists. This week on the show, we have an interview with Ella Harris, who is a professional rider for the Canyon SRAM women's racing team. Also, a bit of a catch up with Matt and I, and a word from our sponsors. As always, shout out to smartmtbtraining.com and the endurancetraininghub.com. The world is online right now, and so are these platforms to help you train smarter, become better. Training plans, videos, webinars, it's everything you need for your endurance sport. Check it out, smartmtbtraining.com and endurancetraininghub.com.
What's been going on, Will?
Just training, Matt. Back into it, back on the grind. On the grind is how I kind of consider it, actually. Just, like Groundhog Day, get up, do something, either running or stretching or riding, and get on with my day. In the evening, running, riding, stretching, looking after my son. That is every day.
So, just the usual then?
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
You could put this podcast, listen to it anytime, and you'll be like, that's Will's day.
I've been a bit the same. I was thinking, I think I've been riding a lot more lately. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just still riding pretty much every day, except we're not mountain biking now, which is a bummer. So I'm spending more time on the road, so maybe it feels like I'm riding more. But the weather's been great, so no wind, lots of sun. It's been just great to get out there and get amongst it and enjoy the autumn.
Yeah, well, after our interview with Ella, I'm kind of motivated to get into some online racing. What about you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, especially the gaming aspect of it. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so to put a little bit into context, Ella joined up in 2018. She joined up with the Zwift Academy, and she explains it throughout our interview with her. But what happened at the end of the Zwift Academy is she earned herself a spot on a Pro Tour team. So she had been coming up through the ranks in cycling for a number of years. This Zwift Academy came up, so it's an online riding platform where your fitness determines how good you do inside the platform. And then there's a few tactics involved as well. So she was obviously very fit. She made it through the academy, got to the final 3 in Europe. And at the end of it, she was chosen to be on this pro team. And as she explains it, she actually did really well racing on this team in her very first year in Europe. And it's pretty cool to see how technology has changed the way that riders are able to make it up through the ranks. And I think that's really exciting. And, given that lots of us are spending a lot of time riding indoors now, I think it, gives a lot of people some hope that maybe a new route for them to get to where they want to be, which is really cool.
Yeah, and there's professional esports teams, as she mentions. But yeah, it's a great interview. Oh, super entertaining, really informative. We'll bring it in. So here's Ella Harris. All right, Ella, welcome to the show all the way from Dunedin.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's what Matt thought it was when he first moved here.
Well, pretty much
pronunciations.
Yeah, there's so many ways to say so many of the cities in New Zealand. Obviously, coming here for the first time, you have no idea what to say. Dunedin. Yeah, Gisborne. Yeah. Say it like it's spelled, but I know how to say it now. I was in Dunedin not that long ago for
nice.
Oceania Champs.
Oh, yes.
In January. Mountain bike. Yes. And nationals. Yeah.
Good event in that one.
Yeah. Do you ever go riding your mountain bike or your road bike up on that hill where they had the mountain bike chips?
I've been mountain biking up there once, but I don't actually own a mountain bike, so yeah, no, it's not very frequent.
Yeah.
Nice
You could take it's pretty steep hills.
I just got the very easy one though, the beginner's one.
Oh, it's like legit called the Big Easy.
Yeah, the Big Easy.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Cool. So yeah, your everything's changed a bit for you this year, as it has for most people. But for those, like you said, you've done about 1,000 podcasts in the last week. So we won't get too much into your background. But for you, it sounds like, or reads like, you have always been into some sort of sport, especially endurance sport. You did triathlon. Always raced your bike sort of through the teenage years I'm talking about. And yeah, like what was sport for you growing up?
Growing up, I was very competitive and very sporty. So I loved school PE, anything like that. But my parents, they were always really into multi-sport and triathlon, coast to coast, Challenge Wanaka, that sort of thing. They did a lot of running events as well. So I naturally gravitated towards those sorts of events. I remember going out running when I was really young, in the evenings with my mum. And at first I just absolutely hated it. But somehow I just grew to love it over time. And so yeah, I really got into running. And then that progressed through to cycling when they also went out cycling, and then you've got running, you've got cycling, so you may as well do triathlon as well. So I started doing that. But then, yeah, I'm not a very good swimmer. I realized I couldn't swim very well. So if I wanted to do ITU triathlon, which growing up, that's sort of, where the spotlights are really, that's all you sort of see besides Ironman. So you really see of triathlon. Well, all I saw of triathlon when I was growing up. I always used to watch the ITU, but then I realized if I can't swim, then I'm a little bit on the back foot when it comes to the short, sharp stuff. So, I eventually decided to give triathlon away and just concentrate on what I seemed to be good at the time, which was the cycling. I'd always catch up on the bike and then hang on the run, or try and catch up on the bike and then eventually run through the field. But then as my running deteriorated when I grew up with injuries and whatnot, that happened less and less. So I just stuck with the bike, and yeah, it's I've stuck with it to this day.
So is it just a matter of like you hated the bike less, or like what made you gravitate towards it? Just because you were good at it?
Well, I think I wasn't very good at swimming. I'd done my time in running by the age of 14. So it was just the last option really. And I enjoyed it, and I'd been racing. It was actually more, the catalyst was the fact I moved from Christchurch to Dunedin. And in Christchurch, I really loved running. There are good trails there. We lived in a really nice, place for running. So I could easily get into the hills and that sort of thing. But in Dunedin, the running didn't really inspire me. I joined a club, but I never actually raced for them. But then I joined the cycling club and I started racing for them a lot. So it just all sort of clicked to start focusing on cycling a little bit more once I got down here.
So when was that? Did you stay at school? Did you board, in Christchurch?
So I moved to school in Dunedin in term 4 of year 10. So I'm not entirely sure which year that was, maybe 2016.
So you would have been like 14 or something, 15.
Yeah, it was, 14, 15. Yeah. Yeah. So we bought a house down here. So I wasn't boarding. I was just day student.
Yeah. Right. And yeah, so you get into cycling, but then you still, like now you're really good. Were you always really good?
I think it's more just the situation I found myself in. I guess I think I always showed a little bit of potential on the bike, and I rode a lot with, all the riders at home and the masters men and that sort of thing. And they taught me a lot of things about cycling and They made me really strong, I guess, mentally as well as physically. I think I really contribute a lot of my development as a rider to just being absolutely punished around Dunedin with some of the local bunchies. But I think, yeah, I wasn't one of the best when it came to junior riding. I think I was always maybe top 5. I was always pushing for a podium, but podiums for me were never guaranteed. I wasn't that junior that was absolutely winning everything. If I got a top 5, I'd be happy. If I got a podium, if I got a 3rd place, I'd be stoked. So I was always within Kiwi of doing well and winning things, but I've never actually really won that much stuff. I describe myself, it's a bit of a standing joke in my household, I describe myself as a champion because I'm not really a champion. I've never won that many things, so we just call myself the chump because even though I'm not really actually winning races, I'm sort of winning in my mind, so I'm a champion.
How did that make you feel? Like, 'cause I know the juniors have a lot of pressure on them to win. I see like a lot of pressure coming from parents to like, do well at this race, win this race. And if they're not winning, I can almost sense the disappointment when I look at parents at races. How did it make you feel like, to not be winning as a junior?
Well, I'd never really won anything before, so it wasn't like I knew what I was missing out on. I was getting close to it. That was good enough for me. And my parents never placed any pressure on me, and I never really placed any pressure on myself. So, like I say, a 3rd place was great for me. And thinking back on it, it was more handicap and club races at home that I did. And it wasn't like I was expected to win those sorts of things against masters riders anyway. And there weren't too many junior cyclists. Well, I was basically one of 2 junior cyclists in Dunedin, the other one a male. So I had no real female counterparts and no one to compare or challenge myself against. So I think the big junior races that I tended to do were like the schools champs, the Younker Junior Tour. The only time I ever did nationals as a junior was under 19, my last year under 19, and I placed 3rd in the road race there. So that was a big result for me because it was my first nationals and I really wanted to get on the podium, but there were lots of other girls who were around my ability, and then there were a couple that I knew basically I wouldn't beat. So yeah, it's not like I ever knew that I could be winning lots of things and I wasn't. It was just more if I got success being maybe a 4th place, maybe a 3rd, then I'd be happy. So yeah, there wasn't much pressure on me, that's for sure.
But then, so one of the hardest parts, we spoke to athlete Matt works with Kayla Botcher, who's a couple years younger than you. He's like 19. He's in the position of leaving school. He's in New Zealand mountain bike team, junior, went to world champs, like you did. Mm-hmm. There's no support for you. Like, how do you make that? Like, what was your sort of line of thought leaving school, starting university and continuing on with cycling?
Leaving school, I was probably pretty naive. I didn't exactly know what I really wanted to study, so that didn't help. I just thought, oh yeah, I'll sign up for the local university, that being Otago, because it was the closest one, and then I'll just try and juggle my study around that, and just juggle my sport around that, and just see what happens really. And I ended up signing up for a really full-on degree, which I was not interested in. I didn't really know what I was interested in, so I certainly found out the hard way that I definitely did not want to study. I think I did a surveying paper at one stage, and that was just not a good time. So that definitely didn't help, the fact I wasn't studying something that I liked. But then I just thought I'd be able to keep the cycling going along the side, and then keep racing and hopefully get overseas and do some racing overseas. But I didn't realize how much racing overseas would take out of the study. and vice versa. So I think only in the first year I went away once to Australia for a week or so. But even after that trip, it was really early into the semester. So my first semester, I realized, I can't keep going away like this and expect to be able to keep up with my study doing a full-time course actually on campus. So yeah, it's pretty tough, I think. It's a really tough transition to make, especially when road cycling is definitely find your own way, along with mountain bike and BMX and that sort of thing. It's not like the track program where if you're in the mix, then you can move to Cambridge and it appears that you've got a little bit of support up there. With road, it's very much finding your own way until you actually make it.
So you must have known, though, like going through this, that being like, I have some potential here, because it sounds like, while you didn't put all your eggs in the cycling basket, you knew that, if you spent some time focusing on it, that maybe you could make something happen.
Well, I knew cycling was the sport for me, and I'm very stubborn, so I'd seen lots of people quitting cycling once I left school, and I was just like, no, why would you do that? That's just, you've committed all these years to cycling throughout your schooling. Why would you just stop now? So, in that, I didn't really want to just give it up, and I knew that I had a bit more in me, and I knew that nationally I was up there, I was doing all right, so I wanted to see how much further I could get and then just explore cycling really. So yeah, I knew that I wasn't just going to give up when there seems to be a whole world of possibilities out there in the sport of cycling. So yeah, I just wanted to make it work and see what I could do really.
You didn't feel any pressure? Like, I know with juniors I've worked with leaving school, in that transitional period, there is that external pressure of you need to earn money and you need to go to university. Like, you need to enter the real world. You're not at school anymore. Did you feel any of that?
I always, ever since I've been young, I've always, whether it be triathlon or subsequently cycling, I've always watched the professionals at the top of the sport, and I've seen that some of them don't have degrees and they don't have tertiary qualifications, that sort of thing. So I always knew that I wanted to study, so that was never not an option. And
yeah, my
parents, they both of them didn't go to university, and they've still done really well for themselves. So it was, I knew that I could still do all right if I didn't go to university, but the fact that they didn't go to university, they wanted me to go to university. So I knew for myself that I wanted to go to university as well. So it wasn't not an option to go to university. But then I'd also, growing up, I just wanted to be the best that I could be at a sport, no matter which sport it was. Obviously it started with running, then it was triathlon. And then when I moved into cycling, it was cycling. I just wanted to be the best, and I guess that comes back to me being very competitive. I just wanted to see how far I could get, and just to be the best I could be, really, as cliche as it sounds. So yeah, I always knew that I'd continue cycling after school, and just try and juggle it with uni and hope for the best, really.
That's a good perspective. That's a really cool perspective, because we don't actually see that a lot with juniors, I think, because of that pressure. And I think that's a really hard thing to deal with. Like, because there is this expectation, you go to university and then you get to university, and it is pretty hard, like, to juggle that with like training, any kind of training, because suddenly you're busy and you have to manage your own time, and like no one's managing your time for you. And it seems like there's a zillion things that you have to do. That is really hard. And it weeds a lot of people out, unfortunately, like a lot of really good athletes, where they suddenly get to that point like, oh yeah, I don't really want to do this. This is a bit too hard. But then you add into that there's this huge like lack of support for young riders, and you do have to find your own way. It's a very difficult position to be in.
Yeah, it's certainly a niggly one, and I don't think it'll get easier anytime soon, that's for sure.
No.
Unfortunately, the people listening in that position.
But that just goes to show, like, you need to like have your self-motivation, and you need to have a reason for doing it. It sounds like you had that reason, and you were able to manage your time. So when did you said that first year you just went to Australia and did some races over there. When did you start traveling further?
So towards the end of my first year at uni, I realized that Otago just wasn't really cutting it for me. Well, I wasn't really cutting it for Otago. I couldn't keep up with the full-time demands, really. So, well, it wasn't the full-time aspect of it. It was just the on-campus stuff, having to actually be in lectures, and going to classes, that sort of thing. So I think I moved to Massey online towards the end of my first year, or maybe, no, I think I stuck it out for a year at Otago, but then the year after I moved to Massey online, because I wanted to go and race overseas a little bit more, and obviously having classes to attend to, that wouldn't really work out. So
shout out Massey.
I study online. Yeah, good old Massey.
It gets a lot. It has like so many athletes.
Yeah.
Through that external like qualification process. It's great.
Yeah, distance learning is the best. So I moved to the distance learning at Massey, and midway through, I can't even remember what year. This must have been 2018. Partway through 2018, I went to the States and to Canada to race over there for 5 to 6 weeks. And that was sort of my first foray into proper international racing, just to get a little taste of it and to get some experience.
Which races did you do when you were there?
So I did lots of criteriums mainly. I did Tour of America's Dairylands. I did BC Super Week and Intelligentsia Cup. So yeah, that was just, so I was studying, at the time, full time, but it was manageable being distance learning. So yeah.
And like well, first of all, can I ask you what Bachelor of Agri-Commerce majoring in food marketing and retailing is?
Every time someone asks me what I study, it's always just like, oh, here we go. Like, I looked at the Massey website and I really wanted to study nutrition. I almost went through a bit of a dead patch. I was like, I need to be studying for my own peace of mind, to give me something else to do. I just knew I had to be studying, but I didn't know what it was. And they have so many cool courses on campus at Otago. And I just looked at the Massey website and nothing was really inspiring me that much. They didn't have anything that I would have chosen if it was Otago. So I was like, this sounds all right. I work in a supermarket. I like this sort of thing. I like food. I can't study actually about food, about the nutrition, but hey, we'll just go with the marketing, the agri-commerce side of things. But it's actually quite interesting. It's so it's a Bachelor of Agri-Commerce, which makes me sound like a total farmer, but I'm not. But I've had to do lots of farm papers and horticulture and that sort of thing, which is really random, I think. I did animals and agriculture first year, which was just a total shock to the system, especially when I had to go to a couple of contact courses at Massey about it. So I was dissecting sheep and that sort of thing. But that's
you wouldn't.
Tangent.
You wouldn't have fitted in there.
No, definitely not. Not this like city girl. Anyway, city girl cyclist. But yeah, so it's an agriculture based degree. So you do lots of agri sort of stuff, but then it's like the whole food chain really, from the start of a product where it's grown, all the inputs, that sort of thing, right until the shelf. So I think potentially going forward into the future, it's probably quite a relevant degree to have. I say through probably rose-tinted glasses, but I'd quite like to work for, like a Fix and Fog, a startup company, that sort of thing. Work in the food marketing side of a big business. So yeah.
So Fix and Fog's Cyclist and peanut butter, that makes sense.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Picks peanut butter, whatever peanut butter company wants to take me on.
They used to have a women's cycling team, the Peanut Butter Company in America. Who was that, Matt?
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Peanut. I forget. Actually, I remember what their kits looked like, but yeah, they were sponsored by peanut butter.
I don't know if I want to imagine what it looked like, to be honest.
Well, it didn't look like a peanut, if that's what you're imagining, but
Yeah.
or peanut butter. No, it was blue and white. No, yeah, I forget what they were called, but yeah, they were sponsored by peanut butter. Well, I'll have to Google it while we're talking.
Yeah, so then how did you go at the races over there? Like, I know, it's a big change, right? Even just New Zealand, Australia is very competitive in the world scene, but still the fields probably aren't as largely competitive, or it's deep, I guess you'd say, as when you go to, USA, Canada. So how'd you get on?
Yeah, so the US, the Canada, that was like, Canada, that was like, a stepping stone, for me basically to test the waters before hopefully going to Europe the year after. So I saw America as like an area where I could learn how to really dial in my bike handling, bunch positioning, all the tactical side of things. Just the on-bike stuff that's cycling, that's really important for cycling besides the actual engine, that sort of thing. So I'm not actually very good at criteriums at all. I have probably 3 fast twitch muscle fibers in my body. So I'm definitely not so criterium racing, but I think I got a few top 5s, that sort of thing. I didn't podium over there, but like I said a while back in this podcast, was never really out to win things. Top 5 is success for me. So, it was more about actually, learning from some really good riders over there and seeing how they ride their bikes, how they corner, learning more about bunch positioning, that sort of thing. But yeah, I gained some solid results when I was over there as well, so that was really promising. It wasn't like I was learning all this stuff but still getting completely shoved. So it was it was good, yeah.
And who's guiding you through this? Who's saying like this will be a good idea, this is what you need to learn? Who did you go over with?
So the team I was riding with at the time in New Zealand, Micro Homes, they've since disbanded, but so I was riding for that team, and the year previous, a couple of riders had gone over and raced in America. So they'd had a really good time and they'd learnt a lot. So I figured that it would be a logical step for me to go over there as well. So I went over with Palmerston North local, actually, Libby Arbuckle. So we went over together in 2018, and we went over with another guy from Cromwell called Jordan Gilmore. So he was looking after us, more or less. He was a Masters rider. So he was organising everything, driving the cars, that sort of thing. So he was basically the one-man band when it came to mechanics, logistics, that sort of thing. Then Livy and I just tagged along for the trip. And yeah, we'd seen America as this place where a couple of our teammates had gone to race and they'd really enjoyed it. They'd had a good time. So we thought it would be a logical first step into international racing besides Australia. And it turned out to be a really wise move.
Yeah. And then Matt, have you found that peanut butter team?
Yeah. This is actually really embarrassing. It's called Peanut Butter and Co. And I couldn't remember that. But yeah, it was blue and white. So yeah. Yeah.
All right, Matt. Yeah. You were pretty much most of the way there. You probably shouldn't have brought it up.
Yeah.
So 2018, you've gone over there. You're going pretty well. Like you're getting some results. You're getting international exposure. Then the Zwift thing comes into it.
Yeah, good old Zwift comes along.
Well, first off, Matt brought this up beforehand, and like you're considered or identified as like Zwift, like you and Zwift, and you're you're Zwifting, or you're like winning the academy. But you're a really good off Zwift rider. Like, do you get annoyed that you are identified like almost solely because of Zwift, like indoor cycling?
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me, because Zwift was the way that I found my way into professional cycling, but I don't want another cliche thing. I don't want it to define me almost. I don't want to be that Zwift rider. So I don't want to lose the label. I don't want to lose the label of, being the Zwift Academy winner. Because obviously that's very disrespectful to Zwift and all that they've done for me. And I can't just forget that it ever happened. But at the same time, I want to forge my own path in cycling without just going off the bat of being the Zwift Academy winner. So I think, yes, it was how I got into professional cycling, but I want to be able to build on that. I don't want to just rest on my laurels and say, yeah, I'm in professional cycling because I won the Zwift Academy, and I don't want people looking at me thinking, oh yeah, she's only in professional cycling because she won the Zwift Academy. I want to be able to actually grow on that and be able to prove through other means that I should be in professional cycling, because ultimately that was where I wanted to get with my cycling anyway. So I'd like to think that maybe in a few years' time I would have been a professional cyclist without the Zwift Academy. So I want to acknowledge that I came through the Zwift Academy, but at the same time I want to be able to prove myself through race results, through doing well at big races, to say that I'm not just here because of the Zwift Academy, and I can still pedal a bike really well.
It's not like it happened because of a fluke, right? Like, you didn't just suddenly step on Zwift and there was a glitch in the system and suddenly like you're really good. Like, you were already really good.
It's not like I won a draw or a
lottery.
But
we see that a lot, actually. We see that a lot. And like, there's always, like, cause there always needs to be like, cause there are a lot of good riders, right? Or a lot of good athletes in every kind of sport. And there always needs to be like this one catalyst where they stand out, and then it helps to make the next step. So in mountain biking, we have another New Zealander, Eddie Masters, and he was racing World Cup races with like a Hawaiian shirt, and cause he didn't have sponsors or anything like that, and he was already really good, but it was this kind of thing that just made him stand out a little bit more, and then he was able to get more opportunities, and like, he's still really good, and now he wins races, and that was his trajectory anyway, right? So it's not, he's not good because of that. He was already good.
I really hope that in 5-10 years time or so, I win some big race, or I'm one of the leading contenders for the world champs, that sort of thing. And then people can look back and think, and commentators can say, oh yeah, and 5-10 years ago, she came through the Zwift Academy, like that being almost like not like a distant memory, but like still something that's part of me.
Well, I think, moving into the future, like the way the Zwift Academy has evolved, you'll just be one of many through that route of finding their way in professional cycling. Like, oh yeah, and this is another, she also went through this academy as opposed to this other academy, or opposed to the normal, like, because, and especially this year, the way Zwift and other indoor cycling esports programs are evolving, it's just more and more people are going to get into it. It's going to be, and so that will just be the natural progression for a lot of people. And at this stage, it's not. And you are very much like a poster child for that. So people are going to point the finger and be like, oh yeah, well, she's just like a hardcore gamer, and now is allowed to ride outside.
Well, I do see that theme there, where there's a lot of things going on online here, online study, online racing. But if we could rewind a little, technology, that definitely. If we could like kind of explain what the Zwift Academy is? Because I think there'll be people listening that don't know what Zwift is. And if they don't know what Zwift is, they definitely don't know what the Zwift Academy is. So could you give us some little details on it?
Yeah, so the Zwift Academy, Zwift is an interactive cycling platform. So you can ride in a virtual world with thousands of others who are all from various corners of the globe, in real time in this virtual world from your living room. So you'll be sitting on your trainer, with your bike connected, and basically Zwift. So if you have a power meter on your bike, Zwift uses that, or if you have a smart trainer, there'll be a power meter, within the trainer. So power meters, they record watts. So the watts are what? So power is how you're propelled through the game, basically. So Zwift has some formula where it looks at the power you're putting out, your weight. This is very basic. And then you cycle through this virtual world based on, the output that you're putting through your trainer in your living room at home. So it's a way, of seeing basically how hard you can push the pedals, your physical capabilities, on a trainer, but actually put into almost like a gaming sense, because you're riding through virtual worlds and, you're against other people, but they're just little avatars on the screen. So yeah, it's a really cool concept and has completely changed indoor cycling for me, really, because I used to absolutely hate it.
Yeah, I think most people do hate it. Yeah. But
yeah,
like even when smart trainers came along and like suddenly you could just like watch a movie and like the trainer changed the resistance for you. So you just keep pedaling and you can do a set workout while like not really engaging in like the pain per se. So that was just watching a movie. And now you're watching in Zwift and other platforms, you're watching yourself travel through a bunch of other people while doing either this set workout or just like cruising.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. So, the Zwift Academy then, so what were you doing, like a tour on Zwift? Is that how it worked?
So the Zwift Academy, you sign up for it, and it's, I think at the time it was 12 workouts. So it's a mixture of different sessions that you have to do on Zwift in order to complete the academy. So if you complete all the sessions, then you've completed the academy. So there were 4 testing sessions where there are actual power tests within the workouts. And then I think there were another 6 or so just solid workouts, just really tough sessions on Zwift. And then there were 2 group rides, there was a mixture of group rides and races as well. I think maybe 4 group rides / races. So the power tests that you have to do, they were 25 seconds, 1 minute power, 4 minute power, 10 minute power. So that's basically just looking at your maximum, as hard as you can go, your maximum output on the bike. And that's what the coaches, at Zwift, they really look at when they're, analyzing the results of the Zwift Academy. They want to see how good you actually are and what your physical capabilities are. So they look at the power output. And then from there, once they look at all the results from everyone that's completed the 12 or 14 sessions, the actual details just completely fade as time goes on. But, so once everyone's completed the sessions, it's over a 2-month period, they choose a top 10. And from there, the top 10 do 7 more workouts, a mixture of road and indoor sessions. So there were more power tests on the road and also on the trainer. I think one of them was 2 times 12 minutes on the erg, which was just absolutely brutal. And then 3 minutes on the road as hard as you can, 14 minutes on the road as hard as you can. And then from the top 10, they select a top 3. So I was selected for the top 3, which was the finals. So for the finals, we went to Spain, for the Canyon SRAM team training camp, which doubled as the Zwift Academy finals. So from there, they selected a winner. So that winner was the Zwift Academy winner, and also they won a contract for the Canyon SRAM team for the year after. So in 2018, I won the Zwift Academy, so I also won a contract for Canyon SRAM in 2019. So now I'm riding for them again in 2020. That's it in a nutshell.
So
it's quite a convoluted process.
Matt, this is a question for you. Matt's an expert in power. How accurate is that going to be for a lot of that stuff?
Well, so there's actually a concept of, Zwift doping or, power doping. And,
scandalous.
Yeah. So I was working as part of a team where we were trying to come up with some way to, make sure people couldn't cheat by somehow, looking at different parameters that we get from the power meter at a really high frequency, and then also integrating heart rate and trying to see if we could make sure people couldn't cheat. But one of the things, so that's ongoing, but one of the things that really is important in something like Zwift is your weight. So power is like pretty easy. Like you could probably like cheat in some way where you could calibrate it and do a zero offset and somehow give yourself a few extra watts or something like that. Or you could, maybe put in the wrong weight. And since, power to weight ratio is really important for going up hills, there could potentially be a way around it. And I'm not sure what Zwift is doing on a flat road, but, I'm sure they have their algorithms pretty sorted. Do you know what they're doing for when you're on a flat? Is it just your power makes you faster? Or does power to weight matter?
I'm just trying to think. I don't really know the entire technicalities of what
they didn't give you the algorithm.
I don't know the exact algorithm. But I think it's on the flat. It obviously doesn't matter so much because in real life, watts per kg on the flat it's not really a big deal. But I think it still does play a part because I can keep up with people in races on the flat in Zwift, and other people who'd normally be smashing me on the flat in real life can get dropped. So it does play a part more so in Zwift on the flat, but yeah, like I say, I don't know the formulas, unfortunately, so yeah. I'm not entirely sure to what degree.
Yeah.
Sorry, but what about, I guess you had to do some outdoor stuff, but were they asking you to, like, how were they just like, weeding out any cheaters who are, saying they're 50 kgs when they're actually 60 kgs, or more? Did they do any of that while you're in the academy?
In the actual Zwift Academy process itself, it was fairly relaxed. They just got you to, one of the requirements to be considered for the semi-finals was to put your weight into today's plan, which was the software that we used, put your weight in there every week. But that was about it, really. It wasn't like you had to take a picture of the scales, or we do Zwift racing now. So when we have to send videos of ourselves being weighed. So someone else has to film it, and we have to first place another weight on the scale to show that the scales are calibrated properly. Then we have to stand on, and it has to be like a full body shot video to show that everything's legit. But when it came to the Zwift Academy, there wasn't really anything like that. It was just plug your weight into today's plan, and we'll just work out your watts per kg from there, really. And also just have the same weight in game on Zwift. So yeah, it wasn't actually made to be a big deal. And I think there are definitely the possibility to really take advantage of it. And you actually, to be honest, you notice it a little bit, because you see these people doing the Zwift Academy that and you think to yourself, are you really 50 kgs or 49 kgs? Like, it's a little bit iffy, but eventually you know that if they get to the finals, then I mean, that's a very long way down the track and probably done a little bit of damage by then, but if they get to the finals, they'll eventually be found out. And once you do get to the finals, there's a lot more. They have a set of scales there for when you're racing on Zwift at the finals and that sort of thing. So you get weighed in there properly. But I think this was in 2018, so I know Zwift have actually come a long way when it comes to trying to control weight doping, as they call it. So I think for the 2019 Academy, they potentially had quite a few more measures in place. But when I did it, it was a little bit more relaxed. So maybe that's why I made the cut.
I'm sure. I don't think so. But yeah, that would be pretty funny. Like, you know, they invite the 3 people over to Girona and there's like this masters middle-aged man who turns up. It's like, yes, I'm going to get some sick kit. Meet the King and SRAM ladies. This is going to be so cool. Yeah.
It'd be so embarrassing, like, if you did cheat too. You're like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be worth it. Yeah.
No, I think it would
be one of those things like, oh, this would be good. I'll just shave a few kgs off, like, you know, early on. And you're like, shit, I've really committed to this.
I think it comes down to a moral thing as well. Like, if you're fully committed to trying to get the contract, then I know personally I wouldn't lop a few kgs off my weight just to try and improve my chances. I think if you're willing to do that, then
you're not going to make it. Right.
Sort out, yeah.
Yeah, like those people, like someone that's willing to cheat would be weeded out in a long process like that, I think.
Yeah, and it's like you think to yourself, you're not going to cut the course or you're not going to cheat in an actual race in real life. So why are you going to cheat online as well? To me, it's just the same thing. I'm not going to hide in a bush and try and finish a lap early or something in a road race. Like, I'm going to follow the rules indoors and outdoors as well.
So you win with the contract. How does that work? Like, were they kind of like, okay, like, yeah, you're on, but actually you're not. Like, this is a publicity thing. Or were they like, no, you're fully in. We're going to give you the chance. Like, were you on the same contract as any other rider that's come through that any other, like how they'll just sign anyone? Or were there special terms?
So the next day I signed a contract basically. And it was very much, I assume it's the same as everyone else on the team and looks the same. So I don't know why this should be any different. But yeah, it's just, I signed a contract with the team. They provided me with all the opportunities, all the equipment, everything that any other rider who had found their way onto the team in a different manner. I got exactly the same as them. I got treated exactly the same. It was 100% legit, basically.
Yeah. And then you came back to New Zealand and raced. And then you did quite well at the New Zealand Champs, did you? That year? End of 2019.
2019, I didn't do very well.
Okay.
So National Champs, the January. So 2019, January. Yeah, it wasn't, I think I just finished in the bunch. Wasn't terribly exciting.
What about after you won? Like, how did you feel? Like, so you must have felt ecstatic, obviously, but then there's the realization, everyone, you won, right? So everyone's looking at you now, like, oh, look at this.
Basically. You almost feel like a little bit of a wannabe. Like, you've been selected for this team and you're fully in the team. Like, you're a rider on the team, but at the same time, the last time these people saw you, you were just riding for a local New Zealand team. And then the next time you rock up to a race, you're in a full-blown world tour team, on a team bike and team kit. So turning up to nationals was like, I felt like eyes were on me a little bit. And coming back to New Zealand after the Zwift Academy and winning, I knew that there were so many people that were excited and stoked for me, but at the same time, I also knew there were people thinking, like, this is just crazy. She doesn't deserve this. Like, she's just this local rider. This is just totally ridiculous. The fact she's got herself a spot on this world tour team through Zwift, when there are so many people who year after year, they battle their way around Europe trying to make it in cycling and have never quite had the exposure or had the results to make it a reality. And she's just landed herself on one of the best teams in the world. Like, I definitely felt there was a little bit of tension, not tension, I guess, but just a little bit of sort of bitterness towards me. But I just had to try and brush it aside and know that hopefully when I actually get over with the team in Europe, I'll be able to really cement my place in the squad. So yeah, it was difficult at first, but yeah, as the year grew on, I think people became a lot more accepting of it. So it was definitely good progression.
I mean, that's a really good sign, though, that you made it. Because, like, once you start getting haters, like, that's when you know, like, oh, yeah, I made it. You know? And haters are a really good sign for that.
I'm controversial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It's also a very New Zealand thing as well. Like, that tall poppy kind of thing.
It is, yes. Tall poppy. Yeah.
But, yeah, my wife, she was a professional who rode in Europe for 5 years, and she thought, this is amazing because you're young and you're actually a good rider. Because the lady they selected.
That's the sort of people I like.
Yeah. But you know, she was one who went through all that, like the struggle, like we had her on a couple of weeks ago, which I'd recommend you listen to.
See, that was what I was looking at when I was trawling through the Spotify, and I told you that I needed to listen to some episodes. That was one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be really, interesting for you, I think. But you know, yeah, and she was like, that's really cool that you've been given that opportunity, because as a Kiwi, they are so hard to come by, to get those shots, like, as you know, with trying to get UCI points to get into the teams. And when we're able to race our national champs, and as off-season, you know, there's a lot of things that go against you being from the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we get into 2019. So now you're in the team. And you have to prove yourself. You've got to go race in Europe, and you haven't done that yet, right?
No,
yeah.
That's just a small thing.
Yeah.
Small
okay.
issue.
So you're in, pretty much one of the top sort of 3, top 5 teams in the world. How did you go? How did it all work out?
Wow. It's quite a whirlwind, really. The whole year went surprisingly fast. But the first race I did, the first proper European race I did was a race in the Netherlands, actually. I think, I'd done like a small Spanish UCI race, a lower level race before that with the team. So that was a nice little way to test the waters. But then I was thrown completely in the deep end when I went to the Netherlands. So it was 50, 60k an hour crosswinds. It was rain, hail, just the whole Netherlands package, really. The Dutch experience, the narrow roads, 130 riders. I think the race was 130k in length, and it was just a whole mixture of club teams to some of the higher level teams. So it was just a complete mix of experience and that sort of thing. So the whole race was just crazy. But somehow I found my way to the finish. I was one of 30 finishers out of the whole field. So that was a surprisingly good start. It was tough, but it was survivable, and I didn't feel like I was out of my depth. So that was a really nice feeling. And then unfortunately, one of my teammates who was supposed to be racing a couple of days later, she crashed in that race. So, the race that was on, in a few days' time was the World Tour edition of this race. What's it called? It's called Drenthe. And it's 160k of cobbles, mud, rain, hail. And the team said to me, "Oh, how would you feel about lining up for Drenthe on Sunday?" So I was just like, "Oh, okay, here we go." So my second proper race in Europe was this 160 kilometer, just Dutch crazy experience, really. But I survived that as well. And then from there, did a few races in Belgium, Spain. I did a tour of Yorkshire. I just did a whole lot of racing, really, from tours to one-day races to races where I was more of a leader for the team, to other races where I was helping others. And then ultimately, I finished my season off at the World Champs in Yorkshire. And then I headed to China for the final World Tour race of the year. And from there, I headed home in late October. So yeah, that was the season wrapped up in a nutshell.
Was there any standout results there?
Just trying to think. So I won a young rider's jersey at a tour in Spain. And
that's right. I wrote that down there. The Valter Burgos.
That was one of my first results, if you like, in Europe. That was when I sort of started to prove that that I was fitting in and I could foot it in Europe and at a different level of racing in a completely unfamiliar environment. And then I also placed 4th on GC at the Tour of Colorado. So that was another really good one for me. And I'm just trying to think.
How did you find the altitude?
Yeah, it was a little bit nasty, actually. There was one stage where the GC decided, and I just had reservations about going too deep, and I raced pretty conservatively. But yeah, it was really noticeable. And even though we'd done 2 to 3 weeks of training beforehand, actually in Colorado, and I'd raced previously, I did like a 160k gravel race for a bit of fun. So I still really noticed it. So yeah, it was tough, but it was a really good experience actually, because I'd never been to altitude before. So it was cool.
And Colorado's cool.
Yes, it's a very cool place. Yeah, Boulder. It's awesome.
Is that where you guys stayed?
Yeah, so we stayed in Boulder for a couple of weeks and then we went to Steamboat Springs. But Boulder's just like perfect America. It's just, everything's so clean. Everyone's so fit.
So many burritos. That's so good.
Yeah, that's, everything smells like dope. Or like weed.
That too, yeah. I remember we went to this guy's house for this dinner and his neighbor came over and he's like, "Oh, my wife's baked some brownies." So he pulls out this ice container with brownies and he's like, "Don't worry, these aren't the weed ones." I was like, what?
Yeah. Just for people who don't know, it's legal over there, like in the state of Colorado.
Yeah,
so
legal. Yeah.
I like his American accent.
Yeah, that's good, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Oh yeah, so you're 4th there. And
yes.
Yeah. And how did Worlds go? Had you been to Worlds before?
Worlds? No, so it was my first Worlds. Yeah, it was just baptism by fire, really. It was probably one of the hardest races that I've ever done, just because the pace was just on from the beginning. I didn't really anticipate it to just be so just constant. It was just this constant pressure on the pedals. It just never really let up. Like there wasn't a time when you could just sit in the bunch, really. I think that was partly because of the nature of the course. It was just constantly up and down, and the road surface was just that classic New Zealand style rough chip as well. So I guess I was a bit more familiar with the European road carpet at that stage. But yeah, it was just a really tough race, and it was just one of those days where I didn't have the best legs either. So I had 2 bike changes in the first 30k, due to punctures and, the New Zealand car being number 26 in the convoy. So it wasn't the best day from the get-go, but yeah, I made the most out of it. I made it to the finishing circuits around the town of Harrogate, and that was about 120k mark. Our race was 150k, and we sort of hit the first rollers on this circuit, and it was like, yeah, that's my day done. See you later. But yeah, so I finished just off a few minutes down on the main peloton, really. I think I snagged myself a top 60, so pretty solid outing.
Yeah,
but
not
yeah,
bad.
hopefully I can actually improve on that in years to come.
Did you guys have the rain? Because they had the crazy rain last year, right? Where they were like,
Yeah. No, we
crank
had the
deep.
best day of all. We had a perfect day in between storms, basically. So yeah, it was very
oh,
nice.
wow. Oh, yeah. Did you do the time
Yeah.
trial there?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. So, like, it doesn't sound that bad for, like, your first European experience.
No,
Like,
I actually failed to mention the 2 broken collarbones, but
Yeah, I was about
Yeah,
to say
it
there
was-
must be some struggles. Like, there's nothing, success doesn't happen without struggle.
Wait, so you had
No.
2 broken collarbones?
yeah, in 2 months.
Wow.
And you
Two
did all those
surgeries.
races.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm a little bit stubborn, so I jumped on the road probably a bit too soon than most people would. I was
That's
back
why you
training
got
fairly
number
quickly.
2.
Potentially. 2 months is enough time for a collarbone to heal, surely.
Wow. So you would have been like out of racing off of the road for those 2 months. Came back and then
No,
it broke again. Is that what happened?
No, it's not as bad as it sounds, like I say, due to the pure stubbornness, because I crashed and then there was a race that I really wanted to do, Tour of Yorkshire, 4 weeks later. So I ended up I had the surgery, and then I did a week on the train, a week and a half on the trainer. I think I was back on the road after 2 weeks. So by that stage, when I was back training on the road, I had a week or so to sort of limber up and get the collarbone feeling good again. And then, the week after I was racing again in Tour of Yorkshire. So I think it might have been 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks between races, which was actually pretty manageable. Like by the time race day came around again, my collarbone was feeling perfect. So yeah.
So was
good to
anyone
go.
like, hey bro, that's a bad idea. You should not go riding for like 2 weeks after a surgery?
Yeah, but if you keep it on the D-low, it's not so bad. Just
Put on private on
don't
Strava.
really have- Yeah, exactly. It was actually worse after the second collarbone break, where I was just a bit angry more than anything. So I think I got out after a week and a half post-surgery. And that was on icy roads in Dunedin in winter. So yeah, I've had better ideas, that's for sure, but
Yeah,
I
especially
survived.
because like you're so well known for riding indoors as well. And like you talk about how positive riding indoors is, and yet
yeah,
you
that's
take these
true.
huge risks
Yeah.
riding outdoors. Yeah.
You
Yeah, so-
can't beat the outdoors. Fresh air.
Obviously, you made a standout because I'm guessing what happened is your contract got renewed then for 2020.
Yeah.
So that's
Got a
pretty
new
cool.
contract.
So now
Yes.
you're like legit, like you definitely don't feel like you don't belong now, right? Like,
No,
is that what
I'm-
2019 taught you? Like, you're like, yeah, you definitely
Yeah.
belong.
2019 was like the year was trial by error, really. I was just experimenting, trying new things, seeing what I could do. Basically I see it as a foundation year, just for building, a base for myself. And then 2020, that's the year where I can start to build on what I learned, the mistakes I made, and the experiences I had in 2019. I can really build on those in 2020 and hopefully really find my feet. And because everything's so familiar, well, it's not so familiar, but it's familiar to me now. So I know what I'm in for. I know what to expect. So yeah, it's a lot nicer going into 2020. with that mindset rather than 2019 where I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself in for.
How was the support? Like what were you getting help with? Like, were you with the team full time, or were you left to your own devices for a while?
So I have an apartment in Girona in Spain. So that's where I base myself when I'm in Europe.
Is that a team provided apartment?
So it's a Zwift organised apartment, actually. So
Zwift organised apartment.
Yeah, the Zwift apartment, the Zwift house. So
is it orange?
Provide an apartment. No, but that's a great idea.
Does it actually exist?
It does.
It's not a virtual apartment, right?
No, I don't live in a computer screen. No, it's a real house. So yeah, I live there when I'm in Europe, and basically last year, most weekends or every few weeks, I'd travel to a different race and meet up with the team. So yeah, I'd just go to and from Girona to races, basically. Yeah.
Right. And so were you back at the Zwift house this year?
Yes, I was. Yeah. Just for
right.
2 weeks.
Yeah. But they were like, so are you somehow still attached to Zwift after?
Yes. Yeah. So they continue to support me, I guess, while I'm in the team, and they sponsor the team as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last year, with being the Academy winner, getting the 2019 contract through the Academy, did you have to do some Zwift stuff, virtual racing?
It was actually fairly loose. You talked about if my contract was the same as the teams everyone else on the team a while back, and basically all I had in my contract in regards to Zwift was that I just had to, do my part, do a few bunch rides, that sort of thing. So it wasn't like I was particularly indebted to Zwift, but because the team's sponsored by Zwift, we do a lot of racing on Zwift. Our team signed up for all the pro series that they have running on Zwift. So there's one happening at the moment. So we race those and we lead bunch rides, that sort of thing. But we also work with other team partners on Zwift like SRAM and Zip, Rafa, Canyon, all of them basically. So Zwift provides a platform where we can actually work with other sponsors too. It's almost like using Zwift as the sponsor, but then interacting with other sponsors as well. So it's quite cool in that respect.
Yeah. And your community, which is like huge. To be able to engage, like you can go riding with the people in, South Africa from New Zealand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
All right. Yeah. And then, so you come back to New Zealand and you won the time trial, under 23 time trial nationals.
Yeah.
That's, are you not like, you don't really look like a time trialist per se. What's your time trial experience? Like the time trial is generally won by probably a track rider, right? Because like we said, very early on, like watts per kg for someone like you, very tall, very lean. Sure, you have maybe a little less frontal resistance, but absolutely.
No, I'm quite bad at the front because of my collarbone. My shoulders don't tuck up very well.
Okay.
I'm not exactly a sail.
But yeah, you like, and looking at the times, you were third overall as well in the open woman.
Yeah, well, I've never really done much time trialing before. The previous proper time trial I'd done before that was the only nationals I did in under 19, where as a side note, I dropped my chain 3 times. So yeah, I've never really been that good at time trialing, and I've never considered myself as much of a time trialist. But when I joined the team and I did nationals in 2019, which was my first race for the team, I saw the time trial and I thought, this year I'm going to have access to some quite good equipment, and it would be really rude if I re-signed for the team, not to do the time trial next year. So as 2019 progressed, I'd come in contact with this time trial equipment. I had a really nice TT bike, that sort of thing, nice helmet, disc wheel. And I thought, I'm going to have to do the TT at Nationals next year. Just get out of my comfort zone and give it a whirl. So yeah, I started riding my time trial bike on recovery rides, that sort of thing. I never really did any specific time trial training in the build up to it because Nationals this year was in February. So I was in Australia for most of January with Tour Down Under, Sun Tour and Cadel Evans, the Great Ocean Road Race. So I didn't have any specific time trial training under my belt. I was just purely going off the fact that physically I was in quite good shape, and when I was training for Australia, I'd done a little bit of heat training. So every indoor trainer session that I'd done, I'd been doing on my TT bike and in my aero tuck, getting my shoulders nice and slim into the aero position. So I knew my position on the TT bike I was feeling comfortable on it. So I guess that's key. You've got to be able to hold a really good position and be aero. So I knew that I had the aero gains in my favor and physical strength. I just didn't have much experience when it came to time trialing. So yeah, I just decided to just ride as hard as I could and see what happened, really.
Oh, well, that worked out.
Yeah, it did. It worked out pretty well.
So I thought Nationals was before the Herald Sun Tour, but anyway, the Herald Sun Tour, like, you almost outdid your identification as a Zwift rider for the lady who cried uncontrollably at the finish line.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what I'm known for now, I guess.
But you won, you won an outside race. So maybe people will be like, oh, I haven't heard of you. And you're like, I cried heaps at the finish. You're like, oh yeah. Because no one can see you crying indoors.
No, but I have cried indoors. Don't get me wrong. That does happen a lot.
Tell us about the race. That race.
So
that was massive.
Yeah,
That's a big tour.
So it was a 2-stage tour for the woman. And the day before, I just had absolute mare. It was this course that, was 90k, basically completely flat. And if the wind was up, then there was the potential for there to be a lot of crosswinds and a lot of damage to be done. But I'd been checking the weather forecast religiously up until before we started, and there was just no sign of wind. And I was like, oh, this is going to be such a boring stage. I really wanted some crosswind action. I was ready for it, but it wasn't on the weather forecast, so I'd sort of switched my mind from that. And most teams in the race had race radios, but because I was riding with the national team, not my usual team, we didn't have any radios. That's just classic cycling New Zealand right there. But I won't
shout out New Zealand.
I won't put any barbs in. But yeah, so we didn't have race radios, so communication wasn't high, and we just ended up hitting this section where even if there were crosswinds, according to the weather forecast, it would be a headwind along this road because the course was just like a rectangle with a few different little dog legs, that sort of thing. It wasn't very exciting. Straight roads. So we hit this road that was supposed to be headwind if the weather forecast was correct, but blow me down. we turned the corner and this team are just putting it in the gutter completely because they knew that there were some surprise crosswinds on the way on this particular stretch of road. So I lost my mind a little bit, really. I panicked and completely lost position in these crosswinds, ended up missing the front bunch. I was the last rider not to make the front split in these crosswinds, and because a few of the teams knew that some of the stronger climbers hadn't made the front split, they weren't making it easy to get back on. So this was at the 50-kilometre mark and the stage was 90k, so we had 40k of just absolute battling, trying to get back into the front split with this bunch that wasn't terribly cohesive. We got within 12 seconds in the end, but then it blew out to 40 seconds. It was 12 seconds with 10k to go. it was closer to a minute at the finish. So I was really dejected, really just annoyed, pissed off. So going into the second stage, which was the Falls Creek stage, I knew my GC ambitions were a little bit down the plug hole. So yeah, I was motivated, but I was still a little bit annoyed after the previous stage. And it didn't help that we were supposed to start at the ski resort, but they had to shorten the stage to starting at the bottom of the climb up to the ski resort because it had been raining and the descent all the way down was 30 kilometers and very dangerous. So we were supposed to descend down this hill, do a loop at the bottom, and then ride all the way back up to the ski resort. So instead we started at the bottom, did the loop, and then rode 30k straight up the Falls Creek ski mountain road. So the stage suited me on paper, but I also quite like descending, so I was pretty disappointed that the descent had been taken out because I thought that could make it more decisive, which it definitely would have. So It was basically just this bunch race straight up a mountain. And if you watch the footage, I get dropped. I think I counted 6 times in the end. I think it was 6 times I got dropped going up this climb due to these attacks. And I'm not a terribly punchy rider, so I just had to keep dieseling my way back on after each attack, and somehow I kept making it back, which was a little bit annoying because after the 5th time I thought, right, I think this is just the final time I'm going to be dropped. I think now's the time where I just roll to the finish, just call it a day, top 5, that'll be good. And then I eventually started catching up again, and it was like, oh no, I'm in the mix again. I'm like, I've got to see this out. So I just had to keep fighting my way to the finish. And the emotion that is shown by me when I cross the line is just it's just complete excitement, but just also complete surprise and just hysterics really, because I just fought my way up that climb so miserably, and it was just so tough all the way up there. And never ever did I think that I'd be winning that race until I crossed the line, especially in the final K where I was off the wheel slightly in 5th place. I thought, oh, I could be challenging for a podium here, but to actually beat the people that had been attacking me the whole way up this mountain and to beat some pretty accomplished climbers was, really exciting and just completely overwhelming.
Yeah, that was massive. And then did you have a lot of, you got a lot of media after that as well, right?
I did, yeah. It sort of blew up a little bit after that.
But that was a great, quote unquote off season really for you, because that you wouldn't have considered that to be part of the main season, which is, I guess, starts around now or last month.
Yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to start late February, really. So that was I was racing throughout January. I think I did 14 race days or something like that. And then from there, I was having a break and then heading over to Europe. But unfortunately, the elephant in the room happened.
Yeah. And then, that's kind of your career, which is awesome. But some of the things very topical at the moment, Zwift or indoor cycling, indoor racing and stuff. So I do want to get into that a bit, because you guys are a Zwift team and you had already been racing as a team sort of on Zwift. And has there been an immediate change to your schedule? Have you guys, what's happened for you guys now? As of April, what's it looking like?
So currently we don't have any actual racing on the cards at all. Nobody does. Nobody knows when it's going to start up again. So until we have definitive dates and an actual plan of attack, we can't really start training towards any specific goals or specific events, because obviously we don't really have a date to work towards. So hopefully I'm thinking July, but who really knows? Nobody knows. So until then, it's just about ticking over the training really. And most of the riders are in some form of lockdown in their own countries. I'm the only rider who's not in Europe. Oh, there's someone in America, but, there's a rider in Australia, a rider in New Zealand, a rider in America, and then the rest of the team are in Europe, and quite a few are in Spain and Italy, so they're in complete lockdown, so they're just riding the trainer. Whereas, others like me, we can go outside if we want to, but I'm not really particularly motivated by the outdoors at the moment. So we're training for the most part on Zwift, and the team, towards the end of April, will start to organise some group workouts that we can do together on Zwift. And for me personally, I'm trying to get into some of the Zwift races a lot more. I'm just entering random club races on Zwift. Triathlon New Zealand had a really good criterium race the other day, which I did. So that was pretty cool. But from the team's perspective, we're doing the Zwift Classics series that Zwift are holding at the moment. So yesterday I did a race around Yorkshire at 6 a.m. So
I happened to watch that.
Oh!
Just because I was on the trainer, I hardly ride, but I ride twice a week. Monday mornings I got a kicker. And I was just flicking through YouTube and it popped up. And so I watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got dropped, eh?
Do you know why I got dropped? This is just the classic, Zwift Racing, rookie mistake, really, because I don't really consider myself very good at racing on Zwift. I'm not very good at like the tactical aspect, because it's just a completely different ball game. But anyway, I got dropped through a sprint prem that I didn't realize was coming up. So there was a sprint prem in game, and everyone just took off. And it wasn't until I went through the banner that I thought that was the sprint prem. And then there was this little gap to the virtual rider in front of me, the next avatar. I thought, oh shit. And then the road started going downhill, and this line of avatars was all strung out, and I had it wasn't very far, it was 5 meters or so to the next wheel, but the gap just grew so fast, and it went from 2 seconds to 10 seconds to 15, all within 500 meters, and it was like, oh no, Ella, this is just the worst place to be. So, yeah, my heart rate was fine, I was hunky-dory. I was ready for this to just hang in this bunch, and then the sprint prem just sprung a surprise on me. So, yeah, that's Zwift racing for you.
I thought you were going to say you had to like get off the bike quickly to turn your fan on or something, and then suddenly everyone was gone. No, I'm sure that happens.
I don't even have a fan in New Zealand. It's really unfortunate.
What? That would be massive. Like, that's a massive performance enhancer, being able to keep yourself cool on an indoor trainer, because there's no wind, there's no convective cooling.
I open the double doors in my lounge. I've got the Dunedin 5-degree temperatures coming through. It's fine.
Yeah, no, you're probably fine in Dunedin. Actually, this is New Zealand, so there's there's plenty of gaps within most housing insulation. Well, we don't have insulation, so you don't even need to open the doors, like, especially in Dunedin.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
don't even have doors.
What's the point, eh? You can feel the draft.
Yeah, exactly.
How does the racing work? Because when I'm watching, and I'd done some racing, but like maybe a couple of years ago, and then I mainly got into running, so I didn't venture back onto Zwift for racing. You got like these power ups. You got legit gaming things where you can. Yeah. It's not like you're not throwing bananas in front of people like on
Mario Kart.
Yeah, and they're not spinning out, but you can make yourself lighter. You can go invisible.
Yeah.
Do you want to just describe racing?
Yeah. So, like I say, I'm probably not the best person to talk to about Zwift racing, because I'm still learning myself. Everyone thinks that I should be really good at Zwift racing, but it's so different. There are so many things that I am yet to learn about when it comes to Zwift racing, and I only really know the basics. But basically, Zwift racing is just, it never lets up, really. When you're in a hard race,
because they're all short, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, you don't really want to do a race above 30k unless everyone sort of doesn't take it too hard, because if they take it hard, then it'll be an absolute nightmare. Like if you're sitting at threshold when you've just started and you've got 50k to go, then it'll be awful. But the races we normally do, they're a maximum of 30k. Yesterday was 27, and we started off, and because there was another sprint prem which I knew about 4k into the race, it was particularly fast. So I think I was doing around 280, 300 watts for the first 10 minutes or so, and that's just in the bunch, and it's just that's full gas.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's really nasty. So Zwift racing, to me, I just describe it as, it's almost like a time trial where you can let off at times, but most of the time you're just on the pedals constantly. Sometimes you can go, it's almost like doing yo-yos. Like you sit at threshold. Sometimes you can go below, sometimes you go above, but threshold is more or less the average power throughout the race, or just slightly below. I think yesterday I was probably 20 watts or so below my threshold for the whole 40-minute race. But I did a criterium race the other day, and I was above threshold for the duration of it. It was a 15k race, and my power was actually higher than what I've got my FTP set at the moment. So yeah, it's just constantly on the pedals. And in terms of like sticking in the bunch, there is a noticeable draft effect. You have to race more to actually be able to detect it and work out where you can save energy, and that's one of the things I struggle with a little bit. Like you can see if your avatar's sitting up, or if it's in the drops, then it means you're not getting any draft. But when you do find some draft in the bunch, it's actually a lot easier. So there are lots of little things that you've got to think about when it comes to Zwift racing. And when people attack in Zwift, it's a little bit harder to notice. I'm not very good at spotting attacks, but you have like a list down the side of all the riders that are nearby, and you can see their watts per kg that they're doing at that time and how far in front they are. So seconds in front, and you can see where people are behind you, that sort of thing. So there are just lots of different aspects that you have to get your head around, and also the power-ups. So that's just I'm terrible with power-ups. I did a race a few weeks ago, and it wasn't until I got to the final 5k where I saw my little power-up sitting there, and it had been there the whole time. And there was the opportunity in the race, because every time you go through banners, you get a new power-up, I think it is. I'm not entirely sure, but it's something to do with the banners. You get a replenish of your power-ups. But, yeah, so I had opportunities to use these power-ups, and I only realized that I had this power-up sitting there when it was coming to the finish, but I had no way of using it because my laptop was too far away. So I had this perfect sprint power-up for the sprint, but I had no way of using it. But yeah, so you have like drafting power-ups where you become undraftable. I think, yeah, you become undraftable, or it's an easier draft. You get an increased draft, I think, from the person in front of you. And then there's the burrito, which means that nobody can draft. Yeah.
Sounds
and then
good.
There's the invisibility, where you go invisible for 10 seconds. So that's really good for attacking and that sort of thing. Then there's the feather up, where I think it reduces your weight by 9 kgs. So obviously that's good for climbing. And then you have the aero power up, which increases something to do with how aero you are, or your speed in the sprint. So yeah, that's definitely the one that you want for a fast finish. That's what I know.
Nice.
I had one in yesterday's race, so I was pretty stoked, and I got second in the bunch sprint. Normally I'm a terrible sprinter, so I was pretty excited that I was able to tick off my goal of using the power up and actually use it successfully.
Did you have your laptop a bit closer so you could actually use it?
I did actually, yeah. Although, that's another story. In a race I did last week, I had my laptop in the perfect position, but my hands were so sweaty that I accidentally released my featherweight power up on the flat with like 10k to go, and there were still climbs. So, yeah, sometimes you have the best intentions in Zwift racing, but it doesn't quite work out.
And do you have race radio? Like, how do you, the question I've never raced in a team. Like, you have a team, can you race as a team, or is it like, cause you can't just set out a lead train, or like, what can you do as a team?
Yeah, so this is something that our team in particular we've struggled with a little bit, because there are lots of very well drilled, solely e-racing teams on Zwift. So they are very polished when it comes to how they race, as a team. So they have, a chat set up. So instead of having music going through their headphones, they have one another on I think it's called Discord. So you're able to talk to one another on like a mobile platform. So we're just starting to use that. Which, yeah, I haven't actually used it yet in a race, but I think after yesterday being dropped in the sprint preem, I will definitely be using it so I can have someone in my ear actually telling me what's coming up. But yeah, so we'd have like a director who would talk to us through this platform, and they can say anything from, if there's an attack that's gone up the road, they'll let you know, what the heart rate of that person's like, if they're cruising, if they're going as hard as they can, what power they're putting out, that sort of thing. When it's a good time to attack, what the heart rate of the other riders is doing in the races, that are just sitting in the bunch, that sort of thing, like who looks like they could make a move. And also just providing guidance as the race goes on. So if there's a break that's gone up the road over a QOM and you've got a sprinter in your bunch, it's just like real life, really. If you want to bring your teammate up for the final sprint, like we've got a really strong sprinter in our team. So if, for example, I was in a bunch with her and there was a small break of 3 up the road, then on Zwift I would get on the front of the virtual bunch and pull it back and try and get us back into contention. Just things like that. Like, you can apply many of the on-road tactics to Zwift. It's just, you've got to get your head around it first. So like, you definitely can have a lead out train. If someone wants a high tempo going into, a sprint, like they want the pace to be really hard, then you can have someone setting that tempo. Obviously drafting is still a thing in Zwift. So if you can position your team on the front with this high tempo, then yeah, teamwork plays a major role in Zwift racing. It's just a little bit harder to understand and to actually learn how to put it into practice than when you're in real life and you can see and talk to everyone.
There's a bit of crossover, right? But not.
There's quite a bit, but it's like a Venn diagram.
I like it. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, so, Matt would appreciate that.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself going then in this whole cycling thing? Do you have any outright goals that you're like, yep, this is what I want to do, or just going to see what happens? Or
I think when I first started cycling, I said to myself, I want to make it into a professional team. And now that I always thought that when I got into a professional team, from there, the opportunities would start to arise. For example, going to the Olympics, going to the Commonwealth Games, that sort of thing. So now that I've ticked off the professional team ambition, then I think definitely Paris 2024. I think that's, a realistic goal for me. Before that, I'd really like to go to the Commonwealth Games, as a bit of a stepping stone. But I sort of have my eyes on just still being able to race some of the bigger races on the women's calendar, like the Giro Rosa, the Women's Tour of Britain. This year I was supposed to be doing the Ardennes Classics, so Liège, Flèche-Wallonne, those sorts of races. I'd really like to do Flanders one day. So yeah, hopefully this year. Well, we don't even know what's happening with the races that were supposed to be happening in February that have been postponed. So we could have Strade Bianche in November, in which case I'd quite like to do that. But yeah, short-term goals, I just want to be able to experience some of the bigger races that I'm yet to have done, of which there are quite a few. And then I'd like to go to the Olympics, and I'd really like to crack a top 10 at the World Champs in the next few years. Maybe I'll give myself a 5-year target for that.
We spoke to my wife Emma about the professionalism of women's cycling. So it's changed a lot. Like, she's been out of the game for a few years now. Like, what's the opportunity for women to earn a living in cycling at the moment?
I think it's difficult, but it's getting better. If you're in one of the larger teams, one of the bigger teams that's registered as a World Tour team, so there are 8 of us, so Canyon SRAM is one of the World Tour teams, there's a guaranteed minimum salary, so the team have to pay you a minimum salary, and that's certainly a livable amount. And from there are riders that'll be on a lot more money than that, but obviously it's nowhere near the starting rate. Well, my starting rate, for example, would be nowhere near a starting rate of a male my age going into a World Tour team. Because I know some of those riders, they'll start on $80,000 New Zealand, that sort of figure, and that's a very entry level starting point. So there's a lot of inequality when it comes to the amount that females get paid versus the amount that males get paid, but there are some good things starting to happen, and I don't really want to think about how the current global situation could affect those, but with the certainly the minimum wage salary and some of the unions that are starting to be established for female riding, it's definitely promising. And at the moment, for me, it's certainly, if I wasn't in a professional cycling team, I'd just be studying and I'd have a part-time job somewhere. So at my current age and stage in life, then it's a very good livable situation for me. So I'm happy, but obviously I hope that going into the future, as things progress and as I progress as a cyclist, hopefully, the steps that are being made will, reflect how much effort that I'll be putting into the sport.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And it is like the scope, and exposure of women's cycling is definitely improving. Social media is helping a lot with that. The likes of your team, very present, on social media, and these new virtual ways to engage with the audience. But otherwise, that pretty much covers a lot, everything.
Yep.
So I did ask some people to fire some questions, and we've pretty much answered all of them within the interview. But there is one from Rich Barter on Facebook. He says, "Hi, Ella. I don't get much kudos on Strava when I post a virtual ride. Any tips for increasing one's kudos? Thanks, Rich. Amateur indoor cyclist / professional walker."
I consider myself to be a bit of an expert in this area, actually.
Ooh.
I think you've just got to have a really good snappy title.
That is what Emma said to him. She screenshotted one of his rides. His ride said power workout. And I'm pretty sure that's the default title that your trainer just sends.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have an image. Come on,
yeah,
Rich.
Putting pictures. People love the interaction. They love being able to look at things, have a bit of a laugh. So, yeah, good title and a good picture goes a long way. And my brother always says that if he puts a picture up of me, then he gets more kudos for some reason. I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet or anything, but maybe if you put a picture up of
you?
A friend or no, put a picture up of somebody that you're riding with, people might be like, "Oh, I like that person. I'll give you kudos for that."
Yeah, well, maybe Rich can just put a photo of you and see what happens.
Yeah, experiment.
It's virtual. People don't know he didn't ride with you virtually.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that was a great interview, and that gives people a lot of details about you and how you made it through, where you're going, and also tells everyone a little bit about virtual cycling, which I think is very trending at the moment, and I think it'll continue to be that way. So that's very cool.
13.
And how can people follow you? Get in, like, yeah, what's your social?
Obviously follow me on Strava, please. I'm always on the lookout for new Strava followers. Follow me on Zwift, and then I can invite you to Zwift meetups, and also on Instagram. I'm mainly on Instagram, so Ella with 3 L's, and then Harris with 3 R's. So ELLAHARRRIS. That's me.
You think the 2 L's, 2 R's was taken?
Yeah, unfortunately it was. But I think the 3 L's is a bit funkier, actually. I like it.
Except that pretty much everyone trying to at you is just atting someone else.
Yeah.
The wrong person.
People pose.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll put a link to that in the description so people can get bump up your followers.
Beautiful. Look forward to it.
Yeah. Well, good luck with the rest of the year, whatever is going on. Hopefully it's happy times in Dunedin for you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a good chat.
All right. Thanks. Catch you later.
See ya.
Alright guys, that was Ella Harris, professional cyclist for the Kenyan SRAM Racing team. Be sure to follow Matt and I on social media to see what we're getting up to at Dr. Will O'Connor, at MTB_PhD. Share this with your friends, tell them to have a listen because it really helps us get the word out. Until next time guys, have a good week.